Great.
And meanwhile,
Thanks so
tonight,
much,
the
Sean.
White House's response to the situation in Japan is raising some eyebrows, and actually, it reminded me of an old Hillary Clinton campaign ad. Maybe you remember this.
It's 3 a.m. and your children are safe and asleep. But there's a phone in the White House and it's ringing. Something's happening in the world. Your vote will decide who answers that call.
Apparently, the president was groggy when he answered that call because on Saturday, hours after the quake struck, he went golfing. And later that evening, he attended a dinner with members of the mainstream Obama mania media. And today, the president spent his afternoon filling out his NCAA brackets for ESPN. Sadly, none of this is a joke. Here with analysis on all of this, Wall Street Journal Stephen Moore, former White House press secretary, Fox News contributor Dana Perino. All right, so he's filling out brackets. He's going to fundraisers, parties, and golfing. And I'm thinking Libya, the Middle East, Japan. I don't get. Frankly, I don't get it.
It is. His seeming passivity is either considered an admirable quality by some or a disturbing flaw by others.
You think?
And what he decides to engage on versus not engage on, it's a moving target. It's impossible to tell what he actually wants to get across. On Libya, for example, they're still deliberating about a no-fly zone. I mean, you're either going to try to help the rebels or you're not. Let's just decide and move on.
Yeah. Steve, I find his lack of engagement now beyond troubling to me.
Yeah, look, there have been three big crises in the last few months. First, we have the big budget crisis. We saw what happened with the president's budget. It was simply a punt. Then we had the speech the president gave last week on energy policy. I mean, we've got $100 a barrel oil now, Sean. And what did he say? More green energy, more of the same, no change in policy. And I agree with you. I think it's been kind of callous to see the president at this time of an emergency around the world to be playing golf and filling out his NCAA.
2 weekends in a row it's golf. He's the NCAA tournament picks. I'm sure they're really important for ESPN, but maybe not at this particular time. We got a nuclear crisis. We got tsunami warnings. We've got the potential. People on the West Coast are scared to death that, in fact, the winds may blow it into the West Coast of the United States of America.
So he probably feels like if he succumbed to all the pressure to comment on everything, he wouldn't have time even to go to the bathroom. But what surprises me is, well, shoot hoops, play golf. But the other thing is, remember, from the communication standpoint, what they've done. Today he did 3 interviews with regional news outlets in key battleground states for 2012. I mean, they're starting very, very early. They still have yet, I believe, to do an interview with NHK, which is the main news outlet for Japan. And how reassuring it would be for the Japanese to hear from the president right now. Another communications point, Steve, is in January when Representative Gabrielle Giffords was shot. That morning, President Obama put out a photograph from him in the White House Situation Room, even after we knew it was a lone gunman. I mean, the Situation Room. And then Saturday, their only communications was a radio address on the Paycheck Fairness Act, which had obviously been taped days before, and they didn't ask him to change it, and his video of him playing golf.
But you know what concerns me about this? Okay, so we've got this is obviously a huge setback for nuclear energy. It may have set it back for many years. But where, Sean,
sure.
Maybe you're right. I hope you're right, because I think nuclear energy is a pretty safe form of energy. But here's the point. If we're not going to have nuclear energy, because a lot of Democrats on the Hill today said, well, that's the end of nuclear energy, and we're not going to have oil because we're not drilling, and we're not have coal because we're not mining.
Can't do that either.
And we're not,
we have nothing.
Natural gas they don't want.
So
where in the world, folks, are we going to get our energy
We're going to rely on the...
I sincerely hope the president doesn't really believe that we can engine and power a $15 trillion industrial economy with windmills. It ain't going to happen.
It ain't going to happen. And look at where we're relying on energy from the Middle East with its instability, from North Africa, from Venezuela, from Mexico.
But all he talks about, Sean, is clean energy.
What's interesting is for years, and Steve, you and I have known this since we go back several years on the energy front, you've heard this phrase, we're not going to drill our way out of this crisis. What's interesting is our policy in the United States is not keeping pace with technology developments. Yeah. And now, in terms of natural gas, there's booms all over America in places where they weren't able to get natural gas before. And now that's got the renewable energy companies nervous.
There's one thing we forgot. He also talks talks about, entitlement reform, he punted on his own budget.
Tell me about it.
Add that to the
the one thing that infuriates me is, the budget debate is going on as we speak. I mean, the House passed their 3-week extension today. The Democrats keep saying, well, you only want to cut these programs. What about entitlement reform? And that's the mantra out of the Democrats. Right. Sean, I've still been waiting from Harry Reid or Nancy Pelosi or Barack Obama for one entitlement reform that will save money. Oh. And the silence has been deafening.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Remember, he voted present most of his years in Illinois. Guys, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Sean.